8 o'clock hour here on Morning at NTV. In case you're just joining us, thank you so much for choosing NTV Uganda as we mark 20 years of many stories, so much impact, but still the same bold voice which is reflected here on Morning at NTV. I am Priscilla Regina Nadwaga. Now, in our tech note this morning, we get to look at the Pearl of Africa, which is something that we say with so much pride. Uganda being a land of extraordinary natural wealth. Every other single day they're telling you they're discovering this rare earth, they're discovering this mineral in Karamoja, they have discovered this in Mubende, they have discovered the other. So from the mist-covered forests of Bwindi Impenetrable National Park, the home to the endangered mountain gorillas, to the vast savannas of the Makshan Falls, the national park ecosystems are among the most diverse on the continent. Now, behind this beauty is an even deeper story. Now, this is a story where conservation in Uganda has evolved over decades and time, from the colonial era models that often excluded local communities to more inclusive, people-centered approaches that are recognizing conservation and livelihood that must go hand in hand. I think the best case story that we can help you relate to is the case of the Queen Elizabeth National Park. And so you do have the park, the animals having to cross into the communities, and so they had put that barricade that, you know, separates the two communities. Yet there's also the element of coexisting as the two communities, the wildlife and the people. But how do we do that in a conservation way? So the journey has been long, but it's still also longer when it comes to protecting wildlife, about financing nature, empowering communities, and also building resilience in the face of climate change. So that is where we are making a stop over this morning, being joined by Pauline Nantongo, a conservation finance expert, to help us unpack this evolution and the story of conservation for us as a country. Good morning to you, Pauline.
Good morning, Priscilla.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Which is your most beautiful element about the Pearl of Africa?
That is like asking me which one of my children is my favorite. I think that our location, actually, because our location in Central Africa makes us have a bit of North Africa, a bit of West Africa, a bit of Southern Africa. There are species for whom their northernmost range is Uganda, and there are also Eurasian species, European species, to whom their southernmost range is Uganda.
Wow.
So we get to have a confluence of so many things. So for me, it's the location.
Wow. Okay.
When I tell people I work with that I can literally, on my home village, I can literally put one leg in the northern hemisphere and another leg in the southern hemisphere.
So?
Yeah, when you're standing on the equator.
Right.
When you're in Kayabwe, what have you?
To do that.
Kayabwe, but you can even cross it in somewhere in Kasese, because it goes across. So when I tell the people I work with, because I work with the global community, when I tell them that every once in a while I get to, at the same time, I get to stand in the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, it's just mind-blowing. So for me, the location is really the thing that I love most about Uganda.
Let's look to an even more bigger picture. How are you describing the state of conservation in Uganda compared to maybe 20, 30 years ago?
20, 30 years ago, maybe even more than that, we had fortress conservation. So because we are, everywhere in Uganda is actually rich. Everywhere you put it, we are a biodiverse country, even in the middle of Kampala. So many, many years ago, it was fortress conservation. You designate this a national park, you designate this a forest reserve, but it wasn't a problem because there was so much land, even on pieces of land that are outside the protected area system, there is forest. So the animals had corridors. They could migrate between one conservation area to the other without a problem. They don't know these boundaries. The people knew the boundaries, but right now what has changed is that the people have grown more. The places that were not gazetted as protected area now have been cleared. So now we have hard edge conservation areas, but the animals still don't care. They still move from one area to another, and in the process, whatever they find edible, they eat. So then we have human-wildlife conflict and so on. So right now, the issues that we have to deal with, yes, we have the protected areas, but we need the land in between because the animals just move from one place to the other, in the process raiding people's crops. Sometimes you even have chimpanzees abducting babies. Yeah, so the things that we are dealing with are more now from a livelihood survival kind of thing. And also we are not developed when it comes to things like irrigation and what have you. We depend on nature itself, but now it's constrained because even the amount of trees or wetlands in the area to sustain water retention that we need to grow food throughout the year is compromised. So now conservation is actually more of a survival, human survival, livelihood issue, even almost much more than the wildlife. Yeah, although also the wildlife is also struggling.
Today we now hear a lot, and to address what you're talking about, community-based conservation is something that's being advocated for quite a lot nowadays. Talk to us about exactly how this model works.
First and foremost, it's just a recognition. Communities have always been involved in conservation. When you talk about the Baganda culture, each and every one of us comes from a clan, and the way we protect those totems of ours. Yeah, so all these were culture systems that contribute to conservation. So right now, what has changed really is the recognition. Now, talk about Uganda, for example. One of the leading causes of deforestation is expansion of agriculture. And almost 80% of the land under agriculture in Uganda is in the hands of smallholder farmers. So in the past, smallholder farmers would just naturally leave trees on their land. So now, but in the past, people would bring seedlings, seed, and grow pines and eucalyptus and that sort of thing. But the smallholder farmer has this rich history of nurturing a Ugandan native tree, whether from seed or from selective retention of naturally regenerating trees. So what has changed now is that recognition that this smallholder has knowledge, they have innovation, they have the will, they have the skill to manage the land. Okay. So the people that are into community-based or community-led conservation are people that have recognized that, and therefore, rather than invent new things or 100% be based on textbook and what have you, is to harness the local knowledge and innovation and then support it. Get, like in our organization, draw financial flows to get into the innovation, the knowledge, and the works of the smallholder farmers.
I know that recognition has also come with its goods, like policies that government has actually drawn in order to support community-based or community-led conservation. Talk to us about some of those.
Actually, some of these policies have always been around. For example, the policy on collaborative forest management, communal land associations. For example, there is a policy, it's been around since the 90s or even before the 90s, where a community can form an association and get those pockets of forest or pockets of wetland that are outside the protected area system and apply for it. They become body corporate. They become the National Forest Authority for that particular piece of land. So those policies have always been there. And so Uganda actually has a very good enabling environment when it comes to the existing policies. Very many countries come here and benchmark their policies based on that. The biggest problem is really the implementation of those policies. So the people that have now gone into community-led conservation, they are utilizing an already existing enabling environment to make this work.
Okay, so speaking of enabling environments, how are organizations such as yourself actually supporting and creating an enabling environment for now these policies to move off the shelf and become livable realities for our communities in line with conservation?
So one of the barriers to those policies being implemented is finances. So all these things require finances, whether to build skills, and also there are very many these protected areas, all these rich, biodiverse rich areas are in places that are so near yet so far away. You know, it's distance-wise, these are not big. This is not a very big country. So distance-wise, this is not so far away. But these are communities where you can't find financial institutions. The people have no access to markets. You know, smallholders are also rational beings. They want to put their land to a use that will be economically viable. So they can produce things, they can produce medicinal extracts, they can produce honey, they can produce very good things. But for as long as those things never get to the market, they will abandon that land use. So when we talk about financing, it's not just money in the pocket. There's so many barriers that they have to overcome to be able to access financial systems. They don't have things like insurance, they can't access credit.
Yes, but Nantongo, as an expert in finance, conservation finance, then what would be, what are some of those tools and programs?
So what we have done first and foremost to recognize their innovation. To recognize their innovation and also to understand that their lack of access to these things is not about them. It is structure, as in the environment in which they work. It's not about them. They are actually accountable because they're dealing with their land. They're the ones suffering climate change and all those things. So what we have done is to document their story. Document their story as it is, but because we are scientists and also we understand the market world, we understand the financial world, we convert their story into proof of concepts that are able to access financing from private sector, from philanthropy, and from public donors.
On that note, 27 years of EcoTrust being founded in 1999, known for pioneering what we're just talking about, community-centered approach in conservation. How significant are organizations such as EcoTrust in shaping Uganda's futuristic conservation landscape?
An organization like EcoTrust has put Uganda on the global map. On the global map, EcoTrust has actually won a number of global awards as being pioneering, and we get to be invited to demonstrate this model to all parts of the world, from Latin America, Canada, Australia, wherever, Europe, and so on and so forth. So one of the things that organizations like EcoTrust has done is to put Uganda on the global map. The smallholder farmers that we are working with, their innovation, their knowledge, put it on the global map. And even given a platform for those smallholder farmers to actually be sharing their stories in this global market. Through those smallholder farmers, we've been able to establish a commercially viable payment for environmental services scheme in Uganda that is a global award-winning scheme. So this scheme, what we do, once we work with the smallholder farmers, do what we call a vision road journey. That vision road journey, we turn it into a proof of concept. Now that the idea is to provide multiple opportunities for multiple income streams. Income streams coming from the sale of products, but also income streams coming from the sale of environmental services. For example, climate change mitigation is an environmental service. When these smallholder farmers protect trees on their land or put trees on their land, this tree will be sucking up carbon dioxide. So we have enabled them to be certified and get carbon credits from the carbon dioxide they store on their land. So now we are even working on biodiversity credits, the ability for them to conserve species of global significance, provide connectivity for these species, increase habitat health, and so on and so forth. We convert that into a credit such that when the smallholder farmers are going into the financial market, they're not going as beggars looking for grants. They are coming onto the table as active participants that have a service they are offering the world, and whatever income they are receiving it because they have provided that service.
All right. Pauline, of course, time is not enough for us to exhaust all the things that we wanted to talk about, but I know that at the end of the day, we must have a call to action and encourage people in the journey of futuristic conservation of what is left of our beautiful pearl of Africa.
First and foremost, to recognize that the people that are in charge of the land in Uganda, they have a commercial story to tell, but their commercial story is also woven around environmental services. They are desirous of ensuring that their land is productive. They are desirous of keeping trees on their land. They are desirous of providing these environmental services. So it's not so much about we need to do mindset change, we need, you know, all those kinds of things. We need to recognize them as very strong contributors, actually as investors. They're investing a part of their land or the whole of their land for conservation. They can see a commercial story out of that, but they are also invested in the actual services that they are providing. Okay. So we need to recognize that they are pivotal, they occupy that pivotal space, and therefore work around enabling them to access the resources they need, but also share their innovation and knowledge with us so that we can also learn from them. We actually have a lot that we can learn from those local communities.
Learning never stops, as we have learned a lot from you, Pauline Nantongo. Thank you so much for opening up our eyes to other ways we can actually tap into the economic growth and development and opportunities, not only within your community or in Uganda, but across borders and across continents. Uganda's conservation story, in truth, is it's still being written, and it's a journey from protection to participation, from preservation to sustainability. And as we've heard, the future will depend not only on the policies which we've been told are good, exist, but in the gap being in implementation, but also in how well people align with the planet and profit. That is where Pauline and of course EcoTrust do come in to help you do align accordingly. So thank